Okay, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here, even to come late at night and see the Beis Medrash so full, the palpable Limud HaTorah is something that really is quite inspiring. In these parshios, one no doubt is bothered by the fact that on the one hand, Paro, the Mitzrim, are clearly punished for apparent decisions that they made, and yet already part of the Bris HaBesarim was Vavodu Yonason Arbami Oshana. And it raises the fundamental theological question that if all of this is foretold, is preordained, so therefore how is it possible that Paro is punished? If you look in the Rambam in Perek Vav Hilchos Tshuva, there the Rambam, Halacha Gimel, Halacha Hey, first the Rambam mentions that sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu suspends Bechira. A person doesn't typically face himself with that situation, but if time after time after time, you make the wrong decisions in life, as Paro did to enslave Knesset Yisrael, maybe there comes a point of no return where punishment is imminent and the door of tshuva is in fact closed. And when you look in the Rambam in Halacha Hey, the Rambam writes the following, that even though it's true that there was a gzeira, but it doesn't exonerate your participation. Certainly it's true that yes, that Knesset Yisrael would experience the Shibud Mitzrayim, but the fact that Paro in the Mitzrayim would be the tool, the catalyst for that fulfillment, that was a function of their own decision. The Rambam writes, just like there'll always be tzaddikim rishayim, there'll always be aniyim and ashirim, l'yachdanim yikarev haaretz, but nonetheless, it is your efforts, your hishtadlus, your decisions that are going to determine whether you're among A or among B, and therefore you're worthy, of course, of schar and onesh. If you look in the Ravid comments that yes, we do have a principle of magalglin chol val yidei chayiv, that sometimes the fact that one participates and one is a catalyst, a tool, a means, even if it's a gzeira kadosh baruch hu, but if it's something which is l'ra, it's a reflection of the decisions that the person has made. And the Ravid emphasizes what you find in Ramban as well, that certainly Paro in the Mitzrayim overreached. It's true that there was a gzeira of Shibud Mitzrayim, but it wasn't necessarily a gzeira of intensity of avdus for that entire span of time. The fact that the Mitzrim insisted that Knesset Yisrael engaged in avodas parech, the gzeira of kol ben hayilod hayot tashlichuhu, that the Ravid writes was a function of decision-making of Paro in the Mitzrim, and therefore indeed they were worthy of punishment. They were the ones who overreached. And you can't just simply chalk that up to absolute bechira. The Ramban writes the same thing, the Ramban in Parshas Lech Lecha, in Bereishis Tesvav Yudalid, that this was not necessarily part of the gzeira, the intensity of the Shibud Mitzrayim, and that aspect is something, no doubt, that we can fault Paro for. That there's a beautiful ha'ara that Rav Yosef Salant has, more than I would tell you just a mashal, that Moshe Rabbeinu was told to take the mate, to turn it into a nachash, and somehow that is going to be impactful. Moshe does so, and the Mitzrim clearly are unimpressed. This is not something that was such a surprise to them. Even Chartumei Mitzrayim were able to go ahead and do so. No, they were able also to take a mate, turn it into a nachash. Maybe not to the extent of Moshe Rabbeinu, but yet they're able to do so. Rashi quotes the Medrash, the Tevan, Machnis, the Ephraim, that imagine, you go to an agricultural area and you bring them wheat. This is commonplace. And therefore that type of magic was known in Mitzrayim. And one cannot help but wonder that why was Moshe Rabbeinu told to take the mate, to turn it into a nachash, if clearly the Mitzrayim are not going to be convinced of Gvuras Hashem. When you speak about Kriyas Yamsuf, Makas Bechoros, that's Gvuras Hashem. That's something no one else could replicate. But the Mate Nachash begs the question, what exactly was the purpose? He writes, with the sense of Charifus, when you look in the Sugya Sanhedrin, Dafayin Ches, imagine a person goes ahead and clubs someone to death. A person shoots a gun. A person shoots an arrow. And you turn to the perpetrator and you say, how in the world? And imagine that he would justify it by saying, it wasn't me. It was the club, it was the gun, it was the bullet, it was the arrow. You're going to turn to that person and say, certainly not, it was you. You're the Rotzeach, right? The gun, the bullet, the arrow, that was simply a tool, a means, a weapon of doing so. And indeed, the Rabbi quotes the Pasuk that Sometimes Ashur is Shevet Api. Sometimes Umas Olam are simply like a stick, a means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes Knesset Yisrael. But that very sugya, send of Ayin Ches, what about Hishich Lo Nachash? A person entices a Nachash, and a Nachash goes ahead and kills or wounds. You know what? The person who enticed, that Al Pidin is called a Grama. The Rotseach is the Nachash. It is not the enticer. The difference between a Mata and a Nachash is clear that one is a tool, one is an independent aggressor. An independent aggressor. Rabbi Yosef Slant writes the Chiddush. Imagine, the Mitzvah would argue, you're faulting us, that Hoy Ashur Shevet Api, the pasuk that the Rabbi quotes in Yeshaya, that what do you mean? This was part of the Gzeira. And we are simply a tool, a catalyst, a means, in order to see to it that the Gzeira Hashem is fulfilled. The very first lesson that Paro was told from scratch was, that's not true. That's not true. You were over-aggressive. You overreached. What you did, as the Ramban writes, was independent aggression. The very difference between a Mata and a Nachash. The transformation of the Mata and the Nachash was not to show Guras Hashem, but to set the stage, to let Paro know, or at least to give us that insight that that's exactly why the Mitzrayim were worthy of punishment. Because of the overreaching, because of the independence, because what perhaps in a different context could have been a Mata became an absolute Nachash. And then if you look in the Ramban, there in Breishis Tesvav Yadalid, the Ramban adds the following. Sometimes, just as a Hakdama, we assume what the Gemara tells us, Psachim Dafnun, that the Olam, Yasok Odam, the Torah, the Mitzvah, Shalol Lishma, because after all, Mitol Shalol Lishma, Bal Lishma. Sometimes a person's mindset, a person's motivation is always important, but not absolutely critical. A person will tell you, I'm engaging in a mitzvah for far from perfect reasons. Would you really tell that person, that it doesn't pay to do so? The Gemara tells us, Mito Shalol Lishma Bal Lishma. There is, Tosus raises the kasha. What about the Sug in Brachos and Daf Yud Zayin and Tainus and Daf Zayin? That's Sug in Psachim and Daf Nun. Sometimes the Gemara says that if a person engages in Torah mitzvah shel lishma, noach lo shelo nivra. Noach lo shel nivra. Tosus raises the kasha. When do we assume ito shelo lishma bal lishma? When do we assume that noach lo shelo nivra? It's better that the person wasn't created. That's Tosus' stira. Tosus answers that there are different types of shelo lishma. Sometimes shelo lishma can simply mean a person has an ulterior motive. A person does something l'shem kavod that maybe ma'asik b'torah is not pristine, but rather, in order to receive certain recognition, okay, mito shelo lishma bal lishma. Sometimes Tosus says it's far worse. It could be amanas lakanter, that the reason I'm learning the sugya so well is because I can go to the shir and utterly embarrass the Maggid Shir. I can go ahead and do something evil, vile, through my Yesek B'Torah. That's where Noach Lo Shelo Nivra. There's an amazing comment of Marachor Zerua, Kuf Samach Gimel. Marachor Zerua writes, is that necessarily a stira? That Noach Lo Shelo Nivra, Mito Shelo Shabal Lishma? Marachor Zerua raises something which is fascinating. That if a person were to ask you, I purchased these Dalet Minim, and I spent a fortune on doing so. In Chutz La'aretz, you can spend good hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on Dalet Minim. And I ask you, why did you spend $500, $600, $700 on Dalet Minim? And the answer is, I didn't do so lishma. I was doing so in order that people should see me, binota Dalet Minim. People should ask me, can I please have an opportunity too? Would you tell the person, don't bother being noto? Don't take those Dalet Minim? I would probably tell the person, all right, we'll speak later, but take the Dalet Minim. No? Why is that true? Why would you tell him to take the Dalet Minim? I probably would have told him, take the Dalet Minim because it's a mitzvah. B'yom Rishon, it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. I would tell you that you should be osek in the mitzvah shelo lishma in order to gain the kiyam ha-mitzvah. You know what Marachor Zerua writes? That's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that the legitimacy of Asek Shelo Lishma is because mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma. You know what that sounds like? Marachar Zur writes, that's like a stunning chiddush. It sounds as though right here and now, not really, not really. But there's a hope. There's a hope that, you know what, eventually you're going to turn the corner. And the value of doing a mitzvah shelo lishma is because, you know what, that who says this is a permanent state? Who says that this condition is one that's going to continue? Maybe you're going to flip. You're going to flip. See what Marachar Zur writes? A chiddush, no steer at all. If a person only does things shelo lishma, literally, no achlo shelo nivra, it's not a kiyum. It's not a kiyum. Does that mean a person shouldn't bother doing so? The answer is no. Do so because mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma. Very different than Tosus, no? Tosus assumes, yes, there absolutely is a kiyum. So how do you resolve the stiras hasugyas? Marachar Zur writes, why is there a stiras hasugyas? That's exactly the point. The Gemara didn't say that engage shelo lishma because of the value of shelo lishma. The Gemara says do it because, the hope is that you're going to turn. And if you don't turn, then absolutely not. That's an incredible chiddush. Marachar Zur writes that lishma could be liikuva. And the only hope of doing so is, a mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma. It's a fascinating possibility in terms of understanding the Gemara. But Tosus clearly not that way. Even within the concept of mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma, what exactly does it mean? Bal lishma at what point in time? At what point in time? There is a comment that Marsha has, it's in Yonason Daf Yud, where when you look in the Gemara, Sota Daf Mem Zayin, the Gemara mentions that all the karbanos that were brought in Parshas Balak, those were shelo lishma. Those were shelo lishma. But the Gemara says that, but look what happened. Down the road. A descendant was Shlomo Melech, who built the Beis HaMikdash and offered karbanos. That's what the Gemara mentions as a mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma. So the Marsha has just a simple comment. It's not always what we think. That the same individual kind of down the road is like going to flip. He comes to the yeshiva and Elul's man, mitoch shelo lishma, and all of a sudden, as the Zman continues, all of a sudden like a bal lishma. Sometimes the bal lishma could be generations later. Not even through the person. But it plants a seed that can blossom at a much later time. A chiddush of the Marsha. And if you look in the Nefesh HaChaim in Gimel, Rechem Velazhin writes almost an opposite concept. And that is the mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma is almost instantaneous. Almost instantaneous. I can be surprised that a person is attending a shir. And I can ask him, what brought you here? And he can tell me every reason shelo lishma. And all of a sudden, in the course of the shir, you see, the Divrei Torah resonates. You see it's impactful. You see that the person is reacting to. Rechem Velazhin writes that mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma is almost instantaneous. Because when you recognize how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, that literally we're wired. Part of our creation is our connection to the Torah Hashem, the Sug Yanid and Daf Lamed. What do you mean the Esek HaTorah is shelo lishma? Superficially. Maybe that's what got you there. But you know what? That simultaneously is going to flip. Rechem Velazhin writes, and even the mitzvahs lishma, that apparently, will be clear in terms of that connection that you have to Torah Hashem. That will be machshir, mitaher, all of the motivations that you thought were considered to be that which is shelo lishma. But I'll ask you the following question. This is what the Chazon Ish discusses, Even Ezer and Kuf Chavtes, Osid Gimel, that sometimes we don't say mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma. Sometimes we assume that lishma is absolutely critical. When it comes, for example, to the mitzvah of Yibum, the Gemara quotes, Yivamos Daf Gimel, Yivamos Daf Lametes, the Shita of Abba Shol, that lishma is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. And even though it's obvious that Mikar Hadin Daraisa, the mitzvahs Yibum, Kodemes, the mitzvahs Chalitza, Abba Shol is very, very concerned. Very concerned. Why is this brother doing Yibum? Maybe he's doing Yibum shelo lishma. Maybe he's doing it l'shem noi, l'shem yishus, l'shem davar acher. Maybe his marriage is not l'hakim shem lachiv hameis. Maybe he's drawn to her. Maybe he's doing so for an extra chelik of Yerusha. Okay, so you know what? Even so, okay, but amito shlo shabal lishma. No, Abba Shol says, ki'ilu pogeh be'erva. Ki'ilu pogeh be'erva. Ramban writes, that's a din daraisa. That's a din daraisa. That Yibum has to be lishma. Somewhat surprising. That Yibum has to be lishma. Why exactly is that true? What happened to the typical principle of mito shelo lishma ba lishma? Rabbi Soloveitchik once pointing out the following, something stunning. Now the Gemara Brachas in the Chavches discusses the additional bracha of Shmon Esrei, bracha of Olam Al-Shini. One can imagine that it was an incredibly heavy heart that Chazal felt it was necessary to institute that bracha. I wouldn't say that that's a bracha that typically comes to mind. When you think that, you're going to recite a bracha, the bracha is Lama Shima Tisikva, that's the bracha that we recite. Birchas HaMalshinim. And the Gemara points out, no doubt, the difficulty regarding who would coin and establish that particular bracha. And the Gemara tells us, Nasiga brachas chavches, that Amad Shmuel HaKatan. And the Tikna, Shmuel HaKatan did so. The Rabbi asked that, why Shmuel HaKatan? Why Shmuel HaKatan? The Mishnah Mesechus Avos, no? Shmuel HaKatan, no? Binfo Yivcha, Al Tismach. Al Tismach. And that was a teaching of Shmuel HaKatan. One could ask an obvious question, that Binfo Yivcha Al Tismach. In many yeshivas, they don't really adequately learn Tanakh. So you think, it's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. It's a pasuk in Pirkei Avos. It's a pasuk in Mishlei. No? This was a statement of Shmuel HaKatan. Binfo Yivcha Al Tismach. This is a pasuk. This is a pasuk. No? Why is it attributed to Shmuel HaKatan? I think the answer is clear. It's clear that the meaning of the Mishnah is, this isn't what Shmuel HaKatan said, but this is the essence of who Shmuel HaKatan was. Right? This is how he lived. This is how he lived. Right? The Tashbis writes, that's always the meaning of Hu Haya Omer in Mesechus Avos. This was an absolute refrain. Now, this is what they modeled. This is what they exemplified. And that was the model of Shmuel HaKatan. When you thought of Shmuel HaKatan, this is what would come to mind. And therefore, the Rav pointed out, it's not coincidental at all that Shmuel HaKatan coined the bracha of Lamashini, because such a bracha has to be absolutely lishma. You're not doing it for any personal reason, for any ulterior motive, for any sense of vindictiveness. You're doing so because, yes, you recognize the necessity of, but you're doing it with a heavy heart. So that's a fascinating concept. And when a person is engaging in a practice that otherwise the default position was not to do so, but the Torah, the Halach insists that in certain conditions, yes, there we don't always assume mito shelo lishma ba lishma. And Pashup Pshat as follows, as the Chazanish points out in Kuf Chavtes, that under typical conditions, this is an Isra Veishasach. It's one of the arayos. But there's an override. There's an override. Here, the Yibum is doche shesach. And the Shita of Abba Shol is that Yibum is doche shesach, but only as a dechuya. Not as hutra, and not as Udramban Shita of Adavar Yatzam and Aklau, but the mitzvah of Yibum is indeed doche. And that already opens up a fascinating issue of Dechiyas Yisurim. When you're engaging in a practice that I would say typically no, but under certain circumstances it's warranted, then Abba Shol's chiddush is the kavanas hagavra. Lishma is something that's absolutely, absolutely critical. That's something that is vital. That's something that is absolutely, absolutely necessary. That's the chiddush of. Maybe by other mitzvos. In Tefillin you're going to say mitoshel b'al yishma, but not by Yibum. Not in Yibum. I would even go a step further, argue as well. This brother that's doing Yibum, l'shem noi, l'shem yishus, l'shem davar acher, that's his only consideration? What, he's really a callous not caring individual? You mean he has no intent whatsoever? Lahakim shem nachiv hameis. Now, Pashup Shada will tell you as follows. Yeah, he's doing it lahakim shem nachiv hameis, but he also has motivation of l'shem noi, l'shem yishus, l'shem davra. In other words, it's a fusion, it's a hybrid. That Avodat is a great chiddush as well. You know what? I'm being nota daled minim because it's a mitzvah daraisa to be nota daled minim. And I'm thrilled to perform the mitzvah daraisa. But you know what? I'll be honest with you. I get a charge out of having beautiful daled minim, and everybody coming over me to say, whoa, where did you? So that's not my sole motivation. I'm doing it also, obviously, primarily because it's a kiyama. Would you tell that person no? No. Just because kind of there's another mindset as well. But here, when it comes to Yibum, Abba Shal's not arguing the sole purpose of that which he's doing is only l'shem noi. He's arguing that may be a factor as well. And even as a factor, that's insufficient for Dechiyas Yisurim. That's what the Chazon Ish writes in Kuf Chavtes, that realize that when you're faced with a situation at times of an override, A being doche B, there you don't assume a mitosh shloisha balishma. There you assume that the kavanah has to be absolutely, absolutely pristine. There's a fascinating comment of the Beis Halevi, Shmos and Perek Beis, and Beis Halevi Alator. He discusses pikuach nefesh and discusses onus rachmana patra. Cool. Where in both cases he writes that kavanah sagavra is absolutely, absolutely critical. Let me give you an example. You know what? A woman is expecting. She's going into labor, right, on Shabbos. You know, we're always conditioned chutz la'aretz. You know, go to the hospital with a non-Jewish car service. Call the car first and say, can you send me a non-Jewish driver? You know, Shabbos chavtes. Shabbos shin chavches. That, what do you, Amir Hakum is mutal chila. Right, even makom shechol shein bo sakana. Of course, if there's a suffix sakana. What about the following argument? You know what? I call the car service, and I asked him, is there a Jewish driver? He said, yeah, there's a Jewish driver. Send me the Jewish driver. Why would I ask the Jewish driver? Because better the Jewish driver should be taking us to the hospital, which is pikuach nefesh, than taking the next call. The next call is to the game. Right? The next call is to the restaurant. Mamish chilul Shabbos daraisa. So if he's there, and he's on call, and it's just a question whether he's taking this call or that call, shouldn't I specifically say that, you know what, that it's the Beis Halevi questions. Is that really true? Is that called pikuach nefesh, which is doche yisurim? For you and I, the only way in the world we would do this, driving on Shabbos, is because of pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh is doche yisurim. But for a person where it's only absolutely incidental, the taxi driver shows up and says, where can I take you? And you happen to say to the hospital, because of pikuach nefesh, but he would take you across the street from the hospital, which is to the game. Ooh, Beis Halevi writes, pikuach nefesh requires kavanah sagavra. And that would be chilul Shabbos. That would be chilul Shabbos. Because in order to engage in the override of Dechiyas Yisurim, there, kavanah sagavra and lishma is considered to be absolutely critical. Beis Halevi writes this about ones rachmana patre. This is again ksuvas and daf gimel. Imagine a person has a get which is out tonight. Im lo basi, if I don't return, this is a get. So what's the classic case in the sugya? Now of yesh ones begitin. The guy is doing everything possible to return, and everything is just out. No, the flights are canceled, the trains aren't running, the bridges are out. Also yesh ones begitin. And the ikra din daraisa without kol demakadesh, havgaz kedushin, is that the get is considered tibatel. Such a chiddush, no? And ones rachana patre and kiyum hatnai, urab chaim, no? Ones rachana patre and onshin, and onshe haguf. Ones rachana patre and kiyum hatnai, but that's a Gemara. That's ksuvas daf gimel. Let me ask you the following question. You know what? A person divorces his wife out tonight, and he has no desire to return. He has no desire to return. It so happens the bridge was out. And had he attempted to return, he would not have been able to. That's yesh onus begitin. That's an onus. No, it's only an onus. Beis Halevi writes, if the reason that you did not return was a function of the onus. If the onus was only incidental. Beis Hillel writes a stunning chiddush based on a comment of the Hafla. Atosus, Ksuvas, Daf Kuf Yud. The Bali Atosus yearned to be in Eretz Yisrael. But Atosus writes, Mamish Sakanash Drachim. No? So the Atosus remained in Chutz La'aretz. Okay. You know what? The Hafla writes, the Beis Levi expands. So for such a person who yearns to be there, but you can't because of onus, that's onus rachona patra. Let's say the person who is so complacent, who's satisfied in being in Chutz La'aretz, and even had there not been an onus, it wasn't even on the map, then there's no onus rachona patra. There can be a sakanas drachim. There can be two people in Chutz La'aretz that do not go to Eretz Yisrael, but for one it's a grievous chet, another it's not. Because for one, the onus is the reason that they remained in Chutz La'aretz. And for other, it's absolutely irrelevant. No? Whoa, that's a heavy chiddush, no? That onus rachmana patre, it depends on the kavanas hagavra. It's only if the onus is the cause of. If the onus is absolutely incidental, that's like the pikuach nefesh of the taxi driver. That's not the reason or the reason that you refrain from. That's wholly irrelevant. And therefore, yes, that is indeed considered to be an Aveira, something which is a stunning horror that the Beis Levi has. The context that Beis Levi, that Hafla, was he discusses, sometimes you have a tragic situation. A couple is married for years and years and years. They're not able to have children together. At what point in time would one say, that you should get divorced in order that the Baal can build a bayis? So the Hafla calls an old psak that we would not say get divorced in Chutz La'aretz, because maybe it's the Aveira of being in Chutz La'aretz that caused that reality. Ooh, that's what the Beis Levi quotes. But then the Beis Levi quotes the Hemshech of Hafla. Yeah, but Tosfos says there's sakanas drachim. And in their day you couldn't even get there if you tried. So how can you fault someone for being in Chutz La'aretz and therefore argue that don't get divorced? What do you mean? It was an onus. And that's exactly what the Hafla answered. It's only an onus if the mindset was otherwise I would be there. And if not, then there's no onus rachona patre. So the Beis Levi writes such a chiddush that when it comes to onus rachona patre, when it comes to pikuach nefesh, those elements of dechi of an override are only if there is clear kavanas hagavra. But if that really was irrelevant, there's no onus rachona patre. You know, the Gemara has a menachos tzadites that you have to remember your learning. No? You have to remember your learning. You tell me that, no, that's not my derech halimud. I'm into, but retention, that's Chazal's derech halimud. No? Chazal tell you, menachos tzadites. Kol l'mishakeach derech chimuda. So you're going to tell me, okay, but you know what? You learn, you forget. I'll tell you that's right. Onus rachmana patre. But it's only an onus rachmana patre if you chazer incessantly, and it's an onus that you don't remember. But if you don't attempt, and you don't chazer time and time again, but that's onus rachmana patre. That's like a shock that you don't remember, right? All the shiurim and all the sugyas. I'll tell you straight, if you're not going to chazer time and again, you're not going to remember, and that's not onus rachmana patre. Onus rachmana patre is only when you are fully mishtadel, when you fully invest. Then you can say, you know what, onus rachmana patre, sometimes beyond anything I could do. But systematically, you have to really work, you have to chazer, you have to do. I'll tell you, these are fascinating considerations that the Beis Levi writes that onus rachmana patre, pikuach nefesh, techiyas yisurim, requires absolute kavanas hagavra. I would say part of a starting point with that was Abba Shol, that for you to be doch in Isra Beishasach, you need kavanas hagavra. And if it's l'shem davar acher, kilu pogeh be'erva, Ramban adin daraisa. The Chazon Ish uses an unbelievable phrase, The Chazon Ish has this elsewhere as well. In Yeredeya, in Kuf Mem Tesches, Ratzon HaTorah. Ratzon HaTorah. Adin daraisa. What exactly is the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Chazon Ish writes, when it comes to Dechias Yisurim, is only when Kavanah is squeaky clean. Otherwise, no. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not interested in Yibum, which is Shlol L'Shem Mitzvah. See, I would tell you that about a bracha v'lamashinin. Maybe under certain circumstances, yeah, it's necessary to coin such a bracha. One thing is clear. You don't do so with a sense of vindictiveness. You don't do so with the sense of wishing people evil or being bloodthirsty. You know why you do so? Okay. Because Chazal felt this is appropriate in those conditions, but you do so with a very, very heavy heart. You have to do so absolutely shema. It has to be like Shema Lakata. Ben Fayiv Chal Tismach. There's no mito shalol lishma bal lishma in those cases. You look in the Rambam, Perek Chav Daled of Hilchos Sanhedrin. The Rambam writes that a dayan, a shofet, has enormous responsibility. At times, a dayan even has the responsibility of makin vonshin shalom and hadin. I don't know if you've seen. If not, take a look. The Drush Saran, Drush Yud Aleph. Why the Torah insists on a shofet? Why the Torah insists on a melech? What are the different roles of a shofet as opposed to a melech? You know, a typical shofet enforces the letter of the law. The letter of the law. Yeah, but the Ran writes, realize, if you're only going to have the letter of the law, society will not necessarily function properly. You're only going to put someone to death if you have what? Eidim, Hasra, Yater Atzma Lemisa, Amanas Kein Aniyose. You know, the threshold is so high. The bar is raised. Yeah, so imagine. That means that murderers can get by without any punishment at all. Oh, so you have to have a melech of Makin Vonshin Shlom and Hadin. And the Ran writes a Chiddush. That's why a melech always has to carry a Sefer Torah with him. Because realize that that capacity of Makin Shlom and Hadin could easily be abused. You have to make sure it's absolutely l'shem shamayim. And you know how the Torah creates like a check and a balance? That you're always going to have the Sefer Torah there with you. V'haisimo, v'karbo kol yemei chaya. And the Rambam writes that realize that what happens if you don't have a melech? Oh, that's the hemshich of the Ram. So the shofet wears two hats. The shofet and the melech. A shofet has the capacity of makin vonshin shlom and adin. So the Rambam describes at length in Perek Chav Daled of Hilchos Sanhedrin this concept of makin vonshin shlom adin, and guess what the Rambam writes? But you better make sure that this is absolutely lishma. Because the concept of a makin vonshin shlom adin is like above and beyond the typical that asi lishma is considered to be absolutely yikuva. The Netziv writes in Tshuvas, in Semim Memvav, and the Tshuvas Meishiv Dava, that innovation. Is the halacha innovative? Of course. Is the halacha dynamic? Of course. Are all aspects of religious life practiced today exactly the way they were? No, you know, things are able to evolve. But the Netziv writes, you better make sure that it's absolutely shma. When it comes to new hagdaras, new innovation, we don't assume, oh, mitosh lo lishma ba lishma. Make sure that that indeed is in place. And that, I think, is incredibly critical. That concept of lishma in that fashion. That may not be true of all cases of dechiyah. You know, when you look at the Gemara, Psachim Daf Memvav, the Gemara discusses what happens if Friday is Yontif, followed, of course, by Shabbos. So you have an Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tavshilin. If it's really Asr Min HaTorah to cook or to do malacha, to do hachana from Yontif to Shabbos, how is it that Erev Tavshilin is matir? This is Asr Daraisa. And just you make an Erev Tavshilin, make a bracha, and all of a sudden everything becomes mutter. How exactly does that work? Mm-hmm. Right. So the Gemara has a couple of possibilities. Why midarabanan you need Erev Tavshilin, but why midaraisa don't you do Erev Tavshilin? Why midaraisa is it mutter? It's clear that if this would have been an issa daraisa, Erev Tavshilin is not going to help us. So it must be that you're allowed to go ahead and do so, right? Even without Erev Tavshilin. But why? Why is that true? Right, that's one possibility the Gemara has. The Gemara's machlokas Rabbi and Rav Chisda. Oh, Rav Chisda says the following, that you know what, Tzarchi Shabbos nasa b'yantiv. Tzarchi Shabbos nasa b'yantiv. That's Rav Chisda, Psachim Daf Mem Vav. That you know what, what do you mean? You're allowed to cook on Yantiv for Yantiv. You can cook on Yantiv for Shabbos. Rashi says, ooh, because Shabbos Yantiv is Kiddush Achas. Wow, Kiddush Achas. Rabbi disagrees. Rabbi says, oh well, what you just mentioned. What, cooking on Yantif for Shabbos? No, if guests were to come. On Yantif, wouldn't I graciously feed them this food on Yantif? So, hol v'ik la'arich mechazilei, hashanami chazilei. If guests were to come, you would give them this food here and now? Oh, so therefore, in principle, you're cooking on Yantif for Yantif. And everything you have on Shabbos, like im hosir, host of the Shabbos. Wow. So that's an unbelievable machlokas, Rabbi and Rav Chisda. Either it's tzarchi Shabbos nasa b'yantiv, or ho'il. Anaf kamina. Let's say a person is cooking in yantiv l'chol. According to Rav Chisda, malchus daraisa. According to Rabbi, look, if ho'il works, it works regardless of whether tonight is Shabbos, whether tonight is chol. Or I'll tell you, a chidush tosus. The Magen Avram writes this in the very beginning of Erev Tavshilin. The first comment of the Magen Avram. When you have an Erev Tavshilin, realize you have to make sure to cook all the food early enough in the day that you can utilize it on Yantiv. Because if you just put up your challah toward the end of the day and it's not fit to eat on Yantiv, that will be an Issa Daraisa, and Erev Tavshilin is not going to help. You need Ho'il. So if a person will ask you, why am I allowed to do Malacha from Yantiv to Shabbos? The answer is either Tzarchi Shabbos Nasa B'Yantiv or Ho'il. You know, if you were to ask me, what is the Chiddush of Ho'il? You know what I would tell you? Ho'il ignores Kavanas HaGavra. No? I ask you, why all of a sudden today on Friday, are you cooking so much? You know what the answer is? I'm cooking so much because I need meals for tomorrow, for Shabbos. And you're telling me, no. You're cooking so much because if guests were to come, Ho'il v'ikon chazin. Rav Chisda says there's no way in the world you can argue Ho'il. How can you ignore Kavanas HaGavra? And Rabbi says, of course you ignore Kavanas HaGavra. And that's a fascinating issue. Do you have a right to ignore Kavanas HaGavra or do you not? And Rav Chisda is forced to argue that no, the only reason it's mutter is because Tzarchi Shabbos Nasan B'Yantiv. What exactly is that machlokas? I'll tell you black and white the machlokas. No? The machlokas is what is the role of Kavanas HaGavra in the heter of Ochel Nefesh and Yantiv. Rav Chisda maintains that Meleches Ochel Nefesh is only mutter, and it's only labeled as such if indeed that's why you're doing so. Cooking on Yantiv for Yantiv. The Kavanas HaGavra is critical. And Rabbi is willing to ignore Kavanas HaGavra. These malachos, Bishul, Tochen, Borer, and the like. Oh, they are mutter on Yantiv, independent of the Kavanas HaGavra. Wow, that's something which is striking. If you ask him what underlies that machlokes, I will tell you, maybe that depends on the matir. How is it that Ochel Nefesh is mutter? Maybe I'll tell you that's enough kamina between Hutra and Duchuya, or a Davar Yotzim and Aklal. What is the basis of the heter? If something is what the Ramban writes, it's not Asr, then you don't need Kavanas HaGavra. But if something is Asr, but there's an override, Simchas Yantiv is matir. Is Simchas Yantiv matir when that is not the Kavanas HaGavra? But that's black and white in the Gemara. That Machlokas Rabbi and Rav Chisda has the role of Kavanas HaGavra when it comes to the heter of Ochel Nefesh. Maybe that's a function of the Hutra and Duchuya. And maybe that's L'shitase of whether Shabbos Yantiv is Kedusha Achas or whether Shabbos Yantiv is Shtei Kedushas. But you know, I would tell you, like, that's stunning that you can find such a machlokas in the Gemara as to, insist on kavanas agavra for dechiyah. So all of this, I'll tell you, is a hakdam. The Ramban writes in one line, right? Breishis tesvav yada. There was a bris ben Abisai. And va'avonim yosam b'mayoshan. And you know what? The Mitzrim, Paro, they had a hand in this, no? Hoi ashur shevet api. But just like I would use as a mashal, the bracha of Lamashini, you have to make sure this is Lishma. The Ramban writes in one line, if you were to ask Paro, or you to ask, the Ramban writes Nebuchadnezzar, why did you do that to Klal Yisrael? You think on an honest day they would answer, because of the bris ben Abasari? That was their motivation? That was their intent when they did so? Paro would turn to Moshe Rabbeinu and say that, we were doing so because of? Obviously not. The Ramban writes that the mindset of Paro was lahagdil memshalto. It was purely for selfish reasons. And here, when it comes to that type of anhaga, when it comes to that type of nihug, what, amitosh lo lishma bal lishma? Certainly not. Then I would add to the list of cases where indeed there is a kavanas agavra. And that's absolutely critical. So Ramban gives the two terutzim. Number one, like the Ravid. And that is Paro clearly went above and beyond. Number two, the Ramban writes, what was the mindset? The mindset of Paro. And here I would just connect them and tell you the following. That there is some linkage. Because, sometimes it's hard to tell whether a person's mindset is absolutely shma or whether it's not. But I'll tell you one clear indicator. When a person overreaches, I think that's a dead giveaway that it's not lishma. If a person is doing so kind of with a difficult balance, yeah, but you know what? That Kadosh Baruch Hu said, Kadosh Baruch Hu desired, and therefore you do. You're going to make sure that you do exactly that which. But you know what? If you overreach, isn't that clear? If Avodas Parech and Kol Ben Hayilod was not part of the bris ben Abisai, and Paro did so, I would tell you that's the greatest indicator that this is something which is in the shape and form of that which is absolute shalishma. There's a stunning comment that the Chafetz Chaim has, that it's printed in the Chafetz Chaim al Torah in Parshas Truma, that Shaul HaMelech was punished because of the role that he had in Melchemes Amalek. What exactly was the punishment? Why was Shaul HaMelech punished? I guess Poshup Pshat was the following, because Shaul HaMelech did not do enough. Shaul HaMelech was told to go ahead and to wipe out, and he didn't. He let Agag live. You know what the Chafetz Chaim points out? That doesn't seem that way from the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, Vatas hara b'nei Hashem. That which Shaul HaMelech did was wrong. That which he did was wrong? That doesn't sound like the right formulation. No? That which Shaul HaMelech did was right, but he didn't cross the finish line. He didn't quite do enough. No? It's not that which he did was inappropriate. It's that he did, but he failed too. 99.9%, yes, but there was a slight deviation. So why does the Pasuk say, Batas Rebbein Hashem? So this is a beer of the Chafetz Chaim. It's like, whoa, beer of the Chafetz Chaim. When you're told, Timche Zeichra Amalek, why do you do so? You don't do so because you're vindictive. You don't do so because you're bloodthirsty. You don't do so shalol lishma with the hope of mito shalol shabal lishma. You do so because brachas taf yud. Ma demifkad asibalach lemevad. Kadosh Baruch Hu says jump, how high? Well, Kadosh Baruch Hu says walk, you march. Kadosh Baruch Hu says you do. But you do because of the tzivri Hashem. The Chafetz Chaim writes that by allowing Agag to live, that was an indicator that apparently, again, all this should be taken Lefi madregasa, on the madreg of Shalom Melech, that you know what? There was something else here, other than the fulfillment of the Tzivei Hashem. And therefore, Shalom Melech was punished for every member of Amalek that he killed. Because the heter is what? The Tzivei Hashem. But once you deviate from, it doesn't only shed light on the deviation, it says light everything that you did. And that's why the Pasuk says, you know what the guilt of Shalom Melech was? Vatas hara beni Hashem. That's like unbelievable. No? Then I would tell you, whenever you have those areas where there's a balance, where there's an override, whether it's onus or pikuach nefesh, techias isurim, olchon nefesh, you always have to consider what then is the kavanas hagavra. And that's what the Ramban writes about Paro. You really think the motivation of Paro in enslaving Mitzrayim was to fulfill the bris milah b'sarim? Obviously not. And obviously not. And therefore, if coincidentally that which Paro did was a fulfillment of the bris milah b'sarim, doesn't exonerate him. Doesn't exonerate him in any shape or form. And therefore, here there's no mitosh lo lishma ba lishma. Here you have to make sure that the asiyah is absolutely l'shem shamayim. And no doubt in the broadest sense that, this is critical when it comes to our avodas Hashem. It's critical when it comes to, as I mentioned, the onus rachmana patra. And sometimes, we can take advantage of an excuse, even though we know deep down that's not really the motivation. I always tell my talmidim, you're in the yeshiva, it's sometimes a difficult balance. You're learning hard, you're studying well, it's not always easy too. And if you're in an environment where, there's a dual curriculum, can you really learn 12 and 14 hours a day? Pretty hard to do so. To the extent that is done well, I would tell you that, that's part of the asafta ganecha haneg batzmacha minig derech eretz. But what happens when you have windows of time like a ben hazmanim? Or you have windows of time during the summer months where you don't have those academic pressures? If even during those times you don't find the intensity of the day being fulfilled with Eisek Torah and Avodas Hashem, guess what? It's not only a reflection of the Ben Hazmanim, but it also kind of reflects on the lack of full learning during the Zman. Because even when that counterbalance is missing, when it's not there, but you know what? You have to be careful, not seek every opportunity. When you have the schus, right, of being in yeshiva, and to be able to learn, 3 starim a day, I want you to measure Bittul Torah in terms of minutes, not in terms of that I learned well this week, you have to see accountability for every opportunity that you have. And yes, it's true that, sometimes it's hard 24/7, always, you need some downtime, that's true. But recognize that that you have the capacity to be able to soar in Avodas Hashem. I once wrote that it's unusual. The Mishnah tells us in Maseches Avos that Rabbi Zon was a bor sud shem abetipa. He had a photographic mind. No? So, perfect recall. Okay. So if Pirkei Avos was just a biography of Tanaim, okay, that's probably worth noting in the biography, that, he was a bor sud shem abetipa. But if the purpose of Maseches Avos is to inform Avodas Hashem, so why is that so relevant? I guess it could be inspiring to know that there's such a model, but what does that have to do with most people? That Rabbi Orkanis, right, had this capacity, had this capability. Or, for example, the Mishnah tells us in Avos that Arba Midos B'Talmidim. There's some Talmidim that have very quick grasp, another Talmidim that have an incredible retention, and some have one, some have both, some have neither. Okay, why again is that a Mishnah Maseches Avos? It'll be surprising. A Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, some Talmidim are tall, some Talmidim are short. You wouldn't expect that. Now, why are these natural faculties included in Maseches Avos. I think the takeaway is clear. If you look at the Pirush of the Rina Achmiyash, Maseches Avos, he writes this explicitly, because they are not natural faculties. And that's it, case closed. You know why there's a Mishnah that tells you this? It's because this is what you can become. So, yeah, there's a Mishnah that tells us, Rabbi Hyrcanus was a Bor Surjam Avatiba. I know, but there's a Gemara, Sukkot Av Chavches. Rabbi Hyrcanus, Miyamai, Lo Kidmani on the Beis Medrash. It never happened, not once. Rabbi Hyrcanus, that anyone ever got to the Beis Medrash before I did. And it never happened, not once, that Hinachti Boram V'Yatzasi, that I left the Beis Medrash and someone else was still there. Without exception. Rabbi Hyrcanus was the first one, the last one out. If you'd have asked me, who could have gotten away with coming late and leaving early? Out is Rabbi Hyrcanus, because he was a Bor Surjim Avadip, and they could kind of come in, and crunch, and all of a sudden accomplish what it took. He was always the first one in, the last one out. And I'll tell you a chiddush. You know why I think it's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos? Because Rabbi Hyrcanus wasn't always the Bor Surjim Avadip. That's what he became. He became that because Lo Kidman in the Beis Medrash. And that's why if you look in Pirkei Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar describes like his struggles in learning. That's like really surprising. His struggles in learning, like he was so gifted, so gifted. You know what the answer is that that's what he became. That wasn't always who he was. And that's inspiration. That's why it's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah tells us that Rabbi Yisrael, because this is who you can become. Because realize, when it comes to anything in life, and especially Asik B'Torah, it's really not up to you. You don't control the results of your actions. All you control in life is the extent to which you're going to be mishtad. How much effort are you going to put into? That you control. You think you control the result of? All of that is b'yad Hashem. All that is b'yad Hashem. And that's why the Gemara writes, what do you do to emerge? So the Gemara says, you know what, that Yarba b'yeshivi, Yamayit b'schora. You want to be good in learning, you really have to learn. You want to know Baba Basra, you really have to learn, no? The Gemara says, yeah, but that's not enough. That's not enough. You can learn Bahasmad Atzuma, and you don't know Baba Basra. How is that possible? Because the Gemara says there's one more requirement. Yevakish mishachach mashalo. You have to daven for siyata d'shmaya. And the Gemara writes, neither dafainu beis, hablo halo sagi. Neither one is going to get you there. A person just davens, he's not going to know the Masechta. But a person just learns, he's not going to know the Masechta. The Gemara Mufareshes. Hablo halo sagi. You have to be mishtadel, and you have to be mispalo. If you're not mispalo to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for siyata d'shmaya, you're not going to succeed in life. You're not going to succeed. The Gemara Mufareshes. You can learn and learn and learn and learn. Guess what? You're not going to know the sugya. Because you're not going to know without siyata d'shmaya. And if you're not going to take your davening seriously, and you're not going to be able to, guess what? Talmud doesn't know the sugya. I'll tell me, you're not davening well. You're not davening well. Well, that's the Gemara Mufareshes. And the Gemara writes, some brachas and davav, that sometimes they're dvarim ha'omdim berumo shalom, things that are of paramount importance. Ubnei adam izalzlana. So Rashi likes that one word. Rashi says tefillah. Like that's it. That's it. No, this is om dimur shalom, and people belittle this. And the Gemara Nidin Dafayin, you're not going to be matzliach without it. You have to recognize that. And you know why? Because Kadosh Baruch Hu controls the world. Kadosh Baruch Hu will control all of your success. The only thing that you're asked to do is to be mishtadel and to be mispama. And then you have a right to take a step back and turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you'll ask all your rebbeim how thoroughly surprised they were that this Talmud emerged. And maybe they're thoroughly disappointed that this Talmud did not emerge. It's not about natural faculty. It's about your amelus. It's about your hishtadlus. It's about your koach atfilah. That's going to get you there. That's clear. And that mindset is critical to be successful in learning, right? And to be successful in life. Right? Without it, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If a person thinks, that without that siyata d'shmaya, you could possibly succeed, you're in for a rude awakening. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. People are kind of a mindset, if in business they can kind of cut corners, they can fudge it, they can kind of misrepresent, they're going to get ahead. It's a chisaron in emun and bitachon. Not to think that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to reward a person for doing that which is inappropriate. The Chazon Ish writes in Maviv Chacham, right, in Perek Gimel, that, let's assume, for example, I have a good time of hasagas gvul. You know why you should put forth that time of hasagas gvul? Not because that person is encroaching your parnasa. Your parnasa is determined by Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's katsuv. It's because the chiyuv of hishtadlus demands that you not ignore that encroachment. That's all part of simply the expected hishtadlus of that Gemara Nid and Davayin. But that should be your mindset. And recognize that kavanas agavra is absolutely critical. You can have two people learning the sugya the very, very same way. But the mindset of one is going to empower him, and the mindset of the other will derail. Even though, kind of on the surface, they're putting in the exact same time. Because that intensity, that kavanas agavra, that lishma is considered to be that which is absolutely critical. Take advantage of the opportunity that you have. Right? Seize the pleasure that we have of Asik Batorah and Avodat Hashem. That realize that Lachach Natzarta, that realize that this is why you were created. And realize that, if you have any type of limitation, a tendency to forget sometimes, it's only an onus if you do your due diligence. And if that is a function of, I didn't take it as seriously enough. That's the Beis Halevi's onus rachna patre, where that really wasn't the cause at all. Right? There the kavanas agavra is something which is absolutely critical. So in terms of the Sur Meirav Paro, not in terms of the Asay Tov of our Avodas Hashem, just to recognize that we can soar, that we can emerge in the Torah Hashem. I'll just conclude. The Midrash Rabbi tells us in Parshas Nitzavim, two people are famished. They're famished. All of a sudden they walk into a room and there's food. One hitch, a cathedral ceiling, and the kikar is totally ba'avir. The food's suspended from the ceiling. So the Midrash writes, that the tipesh walks out, and the pikech says, "V'halomi tolos." Someone put it there. It means, it's accessible. It's within reach. And the Midrash writes stunning. That's the meaning of Lo nifleisi mimcha v'lo rachalkehi. This is not distant. This is not something that's me'ever yam. And the Midrash writes the following: V'im nifleisi. And if you think it's beyond your reach, kama mimcha. That's your thinking. That's your mindset. But that's not how Kadosh Baruch Hu created you. Kadosh Baruch Hu created you with the capacity to be able to soar and to accomplish an Avodat Hashem. But you know what? You have to be mishtadel. You have to be mispala. You have to be osek the Torah mitzvahs lishma. And then you turn to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? It's Hashem to be zoche to that sense of siyata d'shmaya. So I brachet each of you. Take advantage of the opportunity that you have. Soar in terms of Asik Batorah, Avodas Hashem. Let it transform who you are. But in order for that to happen, invest. Be mishtadel, be mispala, and Bezras Hashem. You'll be zoche to incredible siyata d'shmaya.